Good morning and welcome everyone to another Tech Tuesday. This is Ryan Goodman and I'm really happy to be with you today to talk about heat maps and how you can create different variations of a heat map within SAP Dashboards and using CMaps analytics. So today I was going to walk you through a relatively simple example that we've built here, and I'm not sure if we posted on the website. If we haven't yet, then we will today, where I can take a global map, include a population in this case, and then draw heat maps in multiple different ways. So this uses the actual heat map to color the intensity. I can also use the alerting and heat mapping capabilities to quickly identify my top or bottom 10. So obviously the bottom 10 are going to be very small countries. They're highlighted in red. I think there's one down here. We can also use some simple Excel logic to increase that number and dynamically paint the map. Or I wanted to see, for example, based on the population average over the world, what countries fall above or below that average. And so the important thing is that each one of these options communicate very different information to the business user. And as we always stress, it always starts with the needs and the understanding that the business user will need to get from the dashboard in order to properly display data on the map. So while a heat map is a nice way to kind of quickly gauge via intensity the high and low performers, something like this average could actually be more valuable depending on what you're wanting to do. So I'll walk you through what's involved here to create this, and then also another nice thing, I'll go ahead and demo it right out of the gates, that I wanted to cover, as we will in pretty much any Tech Tuesday moving forward, is how to create this experience for mobile. Now the cool thing is that we're using functionality here, just standard out-of-the-box functionality, that in this case we could actually take mobile. So in order to transform this dashboard into a mobile compatible one, there's really nothing you need to do. In fact, we'll go ahead and preview this for mobile. So I'm using the BI 4.1 version of SAP Dashboards, and as you can see, what we get here is the same map that we had before, now rendered on Google Maps, which is what we use for mobile. We can still view the top 10 or top bottom. It would work the same exact way, where we'll highlight and draw the locations accordingly. So if we want to see our top 16, change that, it highlights the top 16, or our average, where we take the average population, and anything above average we paint green, anything below average we paint red. So nice that you can actually take this, and in order to use this on a mobile device, really all you'd have to do is publish to business objects. Oh, looks like I accidentally hit preview again. There we go. So we would just save to platform as mobile and desktop, and that's really all that you need to do. So let's go ahead and reverse engineer this one so that you can apply this kind of logic to your dashboards. So if I look at my property sheet here, either by double clicking or right clicking and go into properties, you'll see that to create this experience I only have one layer, and that layer is my world by country. In this case, I'm calling it sales. So what we're doing is we're configuring this particular layer to look at a world shapefile. And within this world shapefile, we've identified two things. One is the keys for that shapefile. So what are the countries that we're bringing down from the shapefile? So this is going to be a list of all of the available countries in the world. So that's my list there. And then we also have what we call our data order keys. So this is the actual BI data that you're bringing down from wherever wherever you're obtaining it from. So it could be business objects, it could be a universe query, it could be Excel data, it doesn't really matter. So now that we've identified our shape data and our BI data, now we have our labels, which is just going to be country names. And now the important part is the values, because it's the actual values that we're using to drive our analysis. And so let's go ahead and look at this real quick of where excuse me, where are we getting our values from? And I'm going to close the property sheet to give me a little bit more room here. So you can see that in this case we're always looking at population. So our actual values are not going to change for the map. What we're doing is we're using this selector to change the logic for which we would define how we're looking at the population visually. So this stresses even more that how you visualize data is very important for the kind of insight that you want to drive. So population is going to be our values, and in this case they're going to be static. I know in other dashboard examples we can dynamically change the values. So if we wanted to look at population or sales or inventory or compare these things, you could certainly do that. But in this example, values are static. So the question is, how do we get this alert logic to work? And that's all based on the alerts tab. So we're dynamically changing the alert logic for which we draw and paint the colors. And so what we can do is we scroll over here. What I've done is we've calculated different types of heat maps. And so first, let's, because it's first on the list here, what I have here is some color definitions. So I've colored them in Excel so that you can visually see in Excel what these look like. But all these are, for your purposes, is color codes. So these are the actual hexadecimal web color codes that we have in the cells here. So they're only colored in the cell, as I said, just to give you a visual reference as the dashboard developer. But we have 3 columns of colors. We have one column for heat maps, one column for top and bottom, and another column for average. So this is where we get our coloring, and we'll come back to that. The most important part is our actual limits. So these are the limits for which we paint our heat maps. And what I'll do is I'll walk you through the 3 different ways that we're calculating these limits. For standard heat maps, what we're doing is we're taking the minimum population, the maximum population, scroll down here, and then the median of the population to give us our heat map. So once we know the min, the max, and the median, we're able to dynamically calculate the difference between these values. So that's generally how we get our heat map. We take the min, the max, the median, and then we create a nice linear scale between the min, max, and median. So what we do is we bind to these limits. Now, what we see here is a range that's highlighted in yellow where I'm getting my limits. What's happening is this selector here, this Excelsius selector, based on which label I click on, it's grabbing the corresponding column of data and dumping it into the destination. So when I calculate my heat maps, it's dynamically placing this column of data into the destination, which is then linked up into the maps. So that's where we get our limits from. And so once the map knows its limits, then we can assign the coloring. Now I'll come back to coloring in a minute. I want to walk through the logic for top and bottom. Now, what we've done here for top and bottom is very similar. what I've done is I've taken the minimum, I've taken the maximum, there we go, or sorry, I apologize, not the minimum. We're using a function not called max, but large. And so what large will do is it will obtain the nth largest value. So what I do here is I take the top, in this case 10. So if I wanted to take top 20, let's give myself a little bit more room here so we can actually see what we're doing here. There we go. So if I wanted to take the top 20, for instance, I can enter the value 20 here. And now I can see, there we go. Now I can see that the top 20th value is this, was it 57 million? No, let's see, 5.7 million. So this is where we get our largest value and then also the smallest. So I can do the same thing for the top or the bottom 10 or 20 smallest countries in the world. And then we do something similar for average, where I take the average, so which is the right in the middle of this range. So I take the average population, and then I say give me everything under average, so average minus 1, or over average, average plus 1. So based on that, based on these limits that we've established, what we can do is assign these colors. And so you can see if I go back to my average, anything that is average is blank, and then anything under average is going to be red, everything over average is going to be green. And so combining these limits and colors, you can really customize and create any type of heat map logic that you want. That's one of the reasons why we left our alerts functionality so flexible. So let me go back to the map here real quick. Go back to properties. I apologize, it's running a little bit slow since I'm remote into a machine. All right, going back to alerts. So as I mentioned, we have our limits and then we have our colors that we're getting. And so the colors dynamically change along with the limits, thus changing the visual appearance of the map dynamically as your user interacts with these selectors. So as I mentioned before, having the flexibility to use the dashboard functionality to change the appearance is an extremely powerful proposition as you design these map analytics. So that's really it. That's all that was to building this particular dashboard. We use Excelsius logic to calculate our limits. We use a selector to dynamically change the color and limits. And then we bind those limits and colors to the spreadsheet using the alerts capability, driving this particular heat map visualization. So that's pretty much it. To get this template, you can always go to our CMaps Analytics website or Senegon Knowledge and download this and other templates for SAP Dashboards. And then once again, to use any of this stuff with mobile, just make sure you have the BI 4.1 version of SAP Dashboards, and then you could obtain the latest and greatest mobile compatible version of CMaps Analytics directly from our team. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day.